and truth, the mountain of the Lord of hosts. For thus says the Lord, I will save my people. I am zealous over Zion. I am zealous over Zion. I am zealous over Zion. I will dwell in Jerusalem. And old women and men shall sit in the streets, each one with their staff in their hand. Children will play in the streets of the city, and joy will be heard once again. I am zealous over Zion. I am zealous over Zion. I am zealous over Zion. I will dwell in Jerusalem. Yes, I am zealous over Zion. I am zealous over Zion. I am zealous over Zion. I will dwell in Jerusalem. They shall return. We will bow. We will return from the east and the west to dwell in Jerusalem. And I am their God in truth and in righteousness. I said, I am zealous over Zion. I am zealous over Zion. I am zealous over Zion. I will dwell in Jerusalem. Kineti, Lexion. Kineti, Lexion. Kineti, Lexion. Shakati, Jerusalem. I will dwell in Jerusalem. I will dwell in Jerusalem. I am zealous over Zion. I will dwell in Jerusalem. Kineti, Lexion. Kineti, Lexion. Kineti, Lexion. Shakati, Jerusalem. Good morning. It's Shabbat Shalom. It is customary that we greet each other. So would you take the time to cross the aisle and find someone that you love and say hi? And hopefully you love everybody. Okay. Mystery behind the veil. Adonai. Every knee will bow to you, Lord Most High. Adonai, you alone are God. Every tongue will cry.
Michael, I need more Marcel in my monitor. His voice.
Sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. And my story isn't over, my story's just begun. And failure won't define me, 'cause that's what the Father does. Yeah, failure won't define me, 'cause that's what the Father does. Ooh, lay your burden down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Arrival's not the end game, the journey's where you are. You never wanted perfect, you just wanted my heart. And the story isn't over if the story isn't good. And failure's never final when the Father's in the room. I said, and failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burden down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, You're in the Father's house.
Prodigal comes home.
The helpless find hope.
Love is on the move
When the Father's in the room. Prison doors fling wide. The dead come to life. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. I said, miracles take place. The cynical find faith. Love is breaking new when the Father's in the room. Jericho walls are quaking. Strongholds now are shaking. And love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. I said, and love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burden down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's
house.
ooh, lay your burden down. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. So we wait for you. Yeah, we wait. You're coming like a bride waiting for her groom. We'll be a church ready for you. Every heart longing for our King. We sing like a bride waiting for her groom. We'll be a church, we'll be ready for you. Every heart longing for our King. We sing, even so, Yeshua, even so, Yeshua. That's our prayer. Even so, Yeshua, even so, Yeshua. Father, that's our prayer today. That's our prayer every day, Father. Maranatha, even so, Lord, come. Come take your rightful place on your throne in this place and in our hearts, Father. Have your way. Have your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We pray this in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Okay, let's hope his slide works. Yeah, it does. All right. Okay, so we're going to move from the New Testament to the First Testament, and we're going to go through some Torah basics. And so, at the request of some, but let's begin with prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this Sabbath day. We thank you for this appointed time that we can get together and to lift you up and to lift one another up, and to help prepare our hearts for your soon coming return. Because, Father, we want to be prepared. We don't want to be like the 5 foolish virgins, but we want to be filled with your Spirit. We want to be walking in your ways, and we want to be a light to our community. So help us accomplish that. We can only do that through your Spirit. And we ask all these things in Yeshua's name. Amen. Okay, so this is called Torah Basics Part 1. And what I'm going to do is go through the 10 Commandments one by one. And but I want to start with an introduction to the Torah. We went through Paul's writings in the last series, and we learned how important one topic, if you don't understand it, the context, it can really change our theology. And we learned that Paul didn't teach against the Torah, right? And he supported it. And so we're going to go into the Torah. We're going to go through some Torah basics because, again, we need to be ready to give answer to the hope that is within us. You have to be able to walk through the scriptures and have them, transfer them from here to here, and to live those out. So by the end of the study today, you should be able to know or explain the basic premises for the foundation of your faith. You should have premises for your foundation, right? And so I'm going to give you, my premises, and I think they're scripture-based, and we're going to walk through those. We should know the difference between form versus function thinking. This is important when it comes to interpreting and understanding the Bible, whether it's, the Old Testament or the New Testament. Distinctions in the Torah in creation, we're going to look at that because there's something very unique about the Torah, unlike any other of the laws of the other gods of the other nations. The meaning of other gods in the first commandment, this is kind of important. The context of the first commandment and the context of Shema, so those last three kind of go together. So what are the basic premises for the foundation of your faith? Well, do you know what a premise is? You know, I had to go. I'm not real English gifted, so a premise is, and I had to look up some of the words in the definition because I didn't quite understand some of the words there. So this is from the Webster's dictionary. A proposition antecedently, and I don't know if I pronounced that right, which is a preceding event, condition, or cause, supposed or proved as a basis of an argument or inference. I'll just put it in simple terms. A premise is a foundation, what you go back to. It's the primary source of what your belief system comes from, and an understanding that you have. There's always a premise. There's always a foundation that you draw from. Okay. For example, you know, if you want to know how to multiply or divide, you know, you go to a math book. Okay, and it explains. So so it's a premise is a foundation, and so the Torah, first and foremost, must be, okay, it's not working. Was it working before? Maybe I got to turn it on. I'm not seeing it move. Oh, I saw the light. Okay, I need some help here. Huh? Okay. Oh boy, it's kind of off the screen a little bit. Okay, so we kind of went through these things. Now, why is it going all over? Okay, we went through these already. Sorry, I'm a little behind. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the Torah, first and foremost, must be the foundation of our faith. Everything must be tested against the Torah. You know, this wasn't something I always believed. Okay, and it wasn't until I began to apply this, the scriptures began to start to come together from the Old Testament, the New Testament, and you know, and there wasn't a difference. You know, Yeshua didn't come teaching something different. Okay, so how many? And you don't have to be ashamed if this isn't where you're at today. But how many believe that the Torah, the first 5 books, is the first and foremost? Must be the foundation of your faith. Everything must be tested against the first 5 books. Is that something that you believe? Okay. If you're not there yet, that's fine. You know, you should live out what you believe, what you know to be true today, right? Okay. So hopefully by the end, you know, of the series, you're going to see how important the Torah is in testing everything that you believe. Okay. All right. The Torah, the first 5 books that Moses recorded, must be understood before we can properly interpret the rest of Scriptures. It contains the basic principles of life in which the prophets, apostles, and the Messiah himself repeatedly referred back to. Yes, all Scripture is profitable. The Torah, however, stands above all else. I'm going to get to that in a minute. So even within the Torah, there are weightier matters, okay? So even within the Torah, there's priorities. So we must be aware of how to properly weigh that balance. It is a matter of life and death, which the Torah is all about. The Torah is all about life and death. The Torah is all about distinctions, which we're going to touch on in a little bit. So did the Torah lose its place when Yeshua came in priority? We can read in John 5, 37, 39. And the Father himself, which has sent me, this is Yeshua talking, and this is right after the Jews came to him and said, you know, we have Abraham as our father. You know, we have a get out of jail free card. And so he responds to them and says, and the Father himself, which has sent me, hath borne witness of me. Ye have neither heard his voice nor seen his shape. Now, what's the inference in those very words right there? You have not seen his shape or heard his voice. But who has? He has, okay. When did he, you know, so he pre-existed, right? And And I think he's referring here to, because he's talking about words which he told them, you haven't heard these words. What he really meant was you haven't believed the words that Moses spoke. So I believe he's making a reference to here when Yeshua was on the mount with Moses and with his father, I believe, giving those words to Moses. But you have not his word abiding in you, for whom he hath sent, him ye believe not. Search the scriptures, for in them ye think ye have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. So what did Yeshua refer the Jews back to in terms of their foundation? It was scriptures. What specifically, what scriptures? So in this book you have, I probably should have started with this, you have the Torah, you have the prophets, and you have the writings. Okay, is that right? Did I get that in the right order? Okay. See, I need to be tested too. So, but the first 5 books, the Torah, is what he's referring back to, because he's talking about these words. He's talking about these words that were given at a time where he says, you've never heard his voice or seen his shape. I have. So he's referring to the Torah. Okay. And in Matthew, this is when the Satan came to tempt Yeshua right after he was baptized. And when the tempter came, he said, if thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh. Yeshua quoted from the Torah. You agree? Okay. And this is where it's at in Deuteronomy 8, verses 1 through 3. For time I may not be able to read all these, but drop down to verse 3 there. And he says, and he humbled thee, he suffered thee to hunger, he fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doth not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh doth man live. So Yeshua quoted the Torah. Then the Satan said, okay, I'll quote some scripture at you. He said, and he said unto him, if thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. So Satan's quoting from the prophets here in Psalms 9. But Yeshua said unto him, it is written again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Yeshua quoted from the Torah. So you see how important the Torah is? The prophets, those scriptures are important, but the prophets have to go by the Torah. They have to speak according to Torah. And so to understand the prophets, you have to go back to the Torah, which is what Yeshua did. So you see a pattern here? And so this is where that's quoted in Torah in Deuteronomy 6:6. You shall not tempt Yahweh your God as ye tempted him in Massah. Okay. And then the devil tempted him again. And he said, all these things will I give thee, in verse 9. Then Yeshua said, if you fall down and worship me, then Yeshua said unto him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship Yahweh thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Yeshua quoted from the Torah. And the two places, I had to find this in two distinct different places. Maybe you can find it all in one verse, but in both cases it's in the Torah. Exodus 34 and Deuteronomy 6. Okay. Let's see here. So, in Mark, let's see, let me back up here. So, Yeshua pointed to the Torah concerning eternal life. We kind of went through this in our series in Ephesians, and but I'll just mention it again. So Yeshua pointed people to the Torah concerning eternal life. In Mark 10, here, there was a man that came to him, what must I do to inherit eternal life? In Yeshua, and this is an interesting story here, because here came a man who came running up to the Messiah and kneeled to him and asked him, good master, what shall I do that I may inherit eternal life? It was something he was very passionate about. And if you read on, it mentioned here that Yeshua loved this man. But he goes on to tell him, he starts quoting the commandments. Okay, so he referred to the Torah. In Luke 10, a similar story, a lawyer came to him, and of course they were tempting him and said, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, what is written in the law of the Torah? So again, he referred him back to the Torah. In Luke 18, and another story, this sounds like the first story. A certain ruler asked him, saying, good master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he referred him back to the Torah. Okay. So, did the Torah lose its place in priority after Yeshua resurrected? It seemed to in a lot of the Christian circles, hasn't it? And again, it goes back to the misunderstanding of Paul's writings, in my opinion. So, now this is an interesting scripture from 2 Timothy. And so, Paul says, and that from a child thou hast known the Holy Scriptures, which are what? The Torah. Okay. Which are able to make thee wise unto salvation through faith, which is in Messiah Yeshua. Now here it says that the Torah is able to make you wise unto salvation through faith, which is in Yeshua. You think Yeshua's in the Torah? Yeah. He's all over the Torah, okay. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. Does the Torah talk about teach us to be perfect? Huh? Complete? In Leviticus, it says, it mentions there that we're to be holy even as he is holy. And that's our goal. That we strive for that. Okay, we can't do it on our own, but that is something that we continue to strive for. Okay, now, was the New Testament penned at this time? No. Okay, so this isn't doing away with Scripture. Okay, I'm trying to show that there's a priority on the Torah. Okay, everything needs to be tested against the Torah. And we just read here that salvation, we can become wise unto salvation through faith in Messiah in the Torah. So basic premises for the foundation of your faith. Premise number two, prophets and apostles must agree with the Torah. Is that a correct statement? Okay. So in Deuteronomy 13, it talks about if a prophet or a dreamer giveth you a sign or wonder and it come to pass, and they say, let us go after other gods which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. You shall not hearken unto the words of that prophet, or dreamer of dreams. For Yahweh your God proves you to know whether you love Yahweh with all your heart and with all your soul. And ye shall walk after Yahweh your God and fear him, and keep his commandments, and obey his voice, and ye shall serve him. So the prophets are subject to the Torah. The prophets referred back to the Torah here in Isaiah 8, verse 20, to the law or the Torah and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. So again, the prophet refers them back to the Torah. All right. The Apostle Paul taught according to the prophets in the Torah. And this is from Acts 26:22. He says, having therefore obtained help of God, I continue unto this day, witnessing both to small and great, saying none other than those things which, what? The prophets and Moses did say should come. And when they mention the Moses, they're referring to the Torah, the first 5 books. So far, so good? Okay. And this is just a Psalms out of Psalms chapter 78. Again, giving the importance of the Torah. It says, give ear, O my people, to my Torah. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from our children, showing to the generation to come the praises of Yahweh and his strength, and his wonderful works that he hath done. For he established a testimony in Jacob, and appointed a law or Torah in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children, that they might set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. So again, the psalmist points us back to the Torah, and to make sure that these instructions, this testimony, and these commandments are taught to our children and our children's children. And this is from Psalms 19. It says here that the law of the Torah of Yahweh is perfect. It converts the soul. The testimony of Yahweh is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of Yahweh are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandments of Yahweh are pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of Yahweh is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of Yahweh are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey in the honeycomb. Moreover, by them thy servant is warned, and in keeping of them there is great reward. So again, here it mentions that the Torah is perfect. We've been taught in many circles that it's outdated, that it's old, and that when Yeshua came, he came to change, what was old and what was outdated. But here we see from the prophets that the Torah is perfect. It converts the soul. So far, so good. And here in Proverbs, we read that he that turneth away his ear from hearing the Torah, even his prayer shall be an abomination. So I want you to see this pattern of importance of why the Torah needs to be the foundation of our faith. And then everything needs to be tested against the Torah. In Ecclesiastes, it says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. So again, the priority on the Torah must be the foundation of our faith. So just again, the premise number one, the Torah first and foremost must be the foundation of our faith. Everything must be tested against the Torah. Premise number two, the prophets and the apostles must agree with the Torah. Again, Yeshua said, I come not to destroy the law or the prophets. And there's a difference between the Torah and the prophets. We've seen the verses that show that distinction here. Okay. All right, so now let's go into the difference between form versus function thinking. This is also a very important key as we begin to, establish the foundation of our faith and to properly interpret the Torah, the prophets, and the New Testament. Many of you have been through this teaching, but I'll just, as a refresher, kind of go through this very quickly. This is something that Brad Scott taught when he came, and it's also known as the difference between Greek thinking and Hebrew thinking, okay? All right, so again, Greek form thinking or form thinking, ask a Greek thinker to describe a pencil and he will describe what a pencil looks like. How many different forms of pencils are out there? You can come up with thousands, okay? Hebrew thinking or function thinking is ask a Hebrew thinker to describe a pencil and he will describe the function or purpose of the pencil. And there's mainly one purpose. Okay, so when looking at the Torah and looking at the instructions that God has given us and the principles of life, if we look at form, you can see what that's created, in our world today. Thousands and thousands of denominations and thousands of different interpretations. But if you look at it through the Hebrew mind, through Yahweh's mind, you look at its purpose, and now what he requires us to do becomes a very simple thing to do. You understand? Okay. So we're going to see that a lot of our doctrines are centered around form thinking and not function. Okay, so we're going to go through a few examples here. So comparing function versus form thinking, graven images. If you look at the form view, you can come up with all kinds of graven images. Okay, we have fruit in our hallway there on a shelf. It's fake fruit. It's an image. Okay, we had an individual come and say that we need to remove that because that's an idol. That's an image. It's a graven image. Okay, it is a graven image. Okay. But is this the purpose of the command concerning graven images? If we look at form, then yes, it's a graven image. There's many that feel that pictures of people and things are an image, so they don't have. I think it's in the Amish community. This isn't a dig. Okay, this is just how they interpret things. And they follow how they interpret things, and we should follow what we believe to be true as we believe it, and as God reveals this new truth, we should change. Okay, so again, this isn't a dig at people who were there, but so you can see that it says, "Thou shalt not make any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the heaven." Okay, well, if we look at function. Remember this. Remember the serpent on the pole. Yahweh commanded Moses to make a serpent on the pole. Is that an image? Is that a graven image? Absolutely. But what was its function? It says, "And Yahweh said unto Moses, Make thee a fiery serpent, set it on a pole, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live." So it had a function. It had a function of life, not death. Okay. Okay, graven images in the temple. Again, this is looking now at function. This is from Exodus 25, and I don't have all the verses up on the screen, but if you read verses 1 through 9, it covers a lot of different examples there. But Yahweh said to Moses, "And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it." And we know in the temple there's many images, graven images, right? Was that against the Torah? If you look at form, yes. If you look at function, no. In Hebrews chapter 8, and I'm just going to read verse 5. Who serve unto the example and the shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that you make all things according to the pattern showed thee in the mount. Okay, so again, just another example in the New Testament where Moses was commanded to make images according to the pattern that was in heaven. And the command says you're not to make any graven images of anything that's in heaven or on the earth beneath. Okay, so if you look at form, you can come up with all types of reasons why we shouldn't have images. But if you look at function, that's what Yahweh's looking at. So he's looking at the heart. He's not looking at the outward appearance. He's looking at the heart. Another example, kindling a fire. And again, when we look at these commands, we form our how we should walk before him. We form things we should do and we shouldn't do, right? And so if you think about kindling a fire, you can come up with all kinds of fires that are produced in the Sabbath if you look at form. But if you look at function, it narrows it down to a very simple thing. One of the things that Yahweh was dealing with Israel was that in industry. In fact, if you look at this command, it's right before, but in the context, they were told to make, images, arts and things for the tabernacle. Okay, and so the application here of kindling a fire was an industrial fire. The work. We're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. We're supposed to rest, and so they had to stop their industrial type creating, with forming things, and that was the function. But he says here in Exodus 35, "Ye shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day." And if you look at just form, all right, also in Exodus 16, verse 23, he says unto them, this is that which Yahweh has said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto Yahweh. Bake that which ye will bake today, in other words, on preparation day, and see that ye will see. So here's an example where they're not to kindle a fire, to bake or to sieve on the Sabbath day. They're to do it on preparation day. But now, if we look at function of this, actually, in Numbers chapter 28, okay, I'm going to read verses 9 and 10. It says, on the Sabbath day, 2 lambs of the first year without spot, and 2/10 deals of flour for a meat or meal offering, mingled with oil, and a drink offering thereof. This is the burnt offering of every Sabbath, beside the continual burnt offering and his drink offering. And I'm going to also look at Leviticus chapter 24 before I comment. This is in verse 8. It says, every Sabbath day you shall set it in order before Yahweh continually, being taken from the children of Israel by an everlasting covenant. This is the command to bake the showbread. So we saw here in the previous verse that they're to offer 2 lambs and 2/10 deals of flour for meal offering, and offered as a burnt offering every Sabbath. So here they're cooking. They're putting meat on the altar. They're putting bread on the offering, and they're also supposed to bake the showbread every Sabbath. Okay. Well, how can they do that? If they're not supposed to kindle a fire. They're not supposed to bake or to sieve. Okay. Well, if you look at, let's see here. The scribes and Pharisees interpreted the Torah in many ways in form view. And here they saw the Pharisees, the disciples eating, picking corn out of the field or whatever it was. And they said, when they entered the house of God and did eat the showbread, in verse 2 it says, behold, when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, behold, the disciples do that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath day. But he said unto them, have ye not read what David did when he was hungered and they were with him? How he entered into the house of God and did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priest? Or have you not read in the law of the Torah how on the Sabbath day the priest in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? So here we see in the latter part of these verses here where Yeshua said the priests in the temple on the Sabbath day, they profane it, but yet are blameless. Why did he say that? What is he saying there? What he's saying there is, if you look at the Sabbath, the things in form view that you're not supposed to do, you can come up with that conclusion. But if you look at the purpose, what was the purpose of the sacrifices? What was the purposes of the showbread? It was for our redemption. It was for, our reconciliation back to God, okay? It was for life, not death. And so we have to look at the Torah in function view, or we'll come up with 1,000 things we're not supposed to do, and it could become burdensome. Okay, but the Sabbath, he said his commandments aren't burdensome. Did he not? But yet we make them because we add to, because we don't properly interpret the Scriptures. Well, I should have went back here on. I want to. There's another level of interpretation of Scripture called the Perez level, and so looking at not kindling a fire on a Sabbath day, we can look at that, and this is a function view. Let me find it here. Let's see. I don't have it. I don't have it in here, but if I can read that, I got to turn around. It says, okay, in Proverbs 26, 20, and 21, it says, where no wood is, there the fire goes out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. As coals are to burning coals and wood to a fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. So here you can take the example from the Torah, a principle, and apply it in a practical way. Just like Paul did concerning tithing. He said that that it mentions there that the ox that treadeth out the corn, don't muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn. He applied that to a principle tithe, right? So he took a simple story, a simple application, and applied it to us. And so here in the same way, wood, and when you take the wood away, the fire goes out. And he compares the wood and a fire to a talebearer that causes strife. You take the wood away, you take the talebearer away, and then contention ceases. So you can apply these principles beyond just the physical application. All right. Let's continue on here. Okay. So focusing on form inevitably leads to misguided doctrine and condemning the guiltless. There's example after example of that, okay? But when we focus on function thinking, as a Torah pattern shows, it leads us to having a correct interpretation and the mind of Messiah. Okay, distinctions in the Torah in creation. This is another important concept of the Torah, and this is something that I learned from Dennis Prager. He's the president founder of Prager University. I got to meet him down in Texas, and he spoke on this topic down there, and I also watched the DVD on this topic called Distinctions in the Torah in Creation. One aspect of the Torah that lies in the heart of secular religious divide in American Western world in general is about separations or distinctions. The overriding message in the Torah is that there are distinctions, and that blurring those distinctions are synonymous with denying God. Distinctions are the signature of God in creation. And so when we're talking about distinctions, we're talking about, opposing things. So there's 6 distinctions that he mentions here: life and death, human and animal worth, God and man, holy and profane, good and evil, male and female. So if we look at these distinctions individually, life and death, the Torah is all about life and death. In Deuteronomy 30, verses 19, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. The Jews were not just to leave Egypt physically, but they were to leave Egypt morally, theologically, philosophically, and values-wise out of Egypt. The essence of Egypt, their Bible was the book of the dead. They lived and worshiped according to the book of the dead. Pharaohs were buried with live human beings to bring them into the life hereafter. They were preoccupied with death. There's a lot of unique cultural things in Egypt that are unknown. And once we understand the context, in their culture, a lot of the things that Yahweh did, his miracles specifically, it explains a lot of things what Yahweh was trying to do. He was trying to get the Egyptians to see. He was really trying to get the Egyptians to know him, to turn and to know him. And so he used their theology to try to prove that to them through all the different plagues, which each one represented something against one of their gods. The Torah, on the other hand, is the book of life. The Torah wants you to be preoccupied with life. Separation of life and death is a huge theme in the Torah. And so these are some of the examples here. The Torah has a ban on priests coming in contact with the dead person. No other religion has this. Most religions, the priests play a major role in funerals and burials, etc. So this is something unique about the Torah. Not to have intercourse during a woman's menstrual cycle. This cycle is a form of death, where intercourse is producing life. So the purpose was not for developing self-control. Self-control is a byproduct, but rather to show distinction. It's life and death, okay? Just keep that theme in mind, life and death. There's a distinction. The rabbinical Jews take it one step further. They do not eat meat with milk, because milk represents life.
of the animal producing the milk, where the meat represents death, okay? Clean and unclean. All permitted animals are vegetarian, where non-permitted are carnivorous. Not all vegetarian are permitted, but all permitted are vegetarian. So, animal and human worth. In the Torah, Yahweh created man in his image. The animals were not. The Torah defines an unbridgeable divide between the sanctity of humans and the sanctity of animals. We cannot eat permitted animals, or we can eat permitted animals, but we cannot eat humans. There is a confusion of the human worth and animal worth in society today. Dennis Prager interviewed the head of PETA and argued the position. And they argued that eating animals, they compared it to Holocaust on a plate. They argue that barbecuing chicken in America is equivalent to the Jews being cremated during the Holocaust. So you see the difference between animal and human worth in society today. The Torah makes a distinction. Dennis gave an analogy of saving your dog or a stranger. If you were in a position where you were on a vacation and you were with your dog, and your dog is drowning and a stranger is drowning, which one would you save if you could only save one? 2/3 of the respondents said they would save their dog over a stranger, okay? So the distinction of animal and human worth is blurred in our society today. This philosophy is the outcome when people are guided by their heart rather than the Torah. The distinction between God and man. God is God and man is man. The common belief today is man is God. Marx and Engel, fathers of Marxism and leftist thought, one states man is God, the other God is man. The Torah states God is God and man is man. We live in an age where man does not want a God higher than himself. I am the highest. I will decide what is right and wrong. That is why there is such a hatred for religion in America, specifically the Judeo-Christian. Those who really want to substitute themselves for God as authority, they don't want those of us that believe God is the ultimate authority. The battle against the Ten Commandments is really about not wanting someone else to have authority over them, telling them what is right or wrong. The holy and profane, another distinction in the Torah. In Leviticus 11:45, says, "For I am Yahweh that brings you up out of the land of Egypt, to be your God. Ye shall therefore be holy, for I am holy." And in Ezekiel 44:23, "And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the profane, and cause them to discern between the clean and the unclean." The Torah was the first book in history to make time holy. The Sabbath was referred by the rabbis as a cathedral of time. And holy in Hebrew, it also means distinct. Distinction in people's conversations. Profanity is becoming a common language where there is no shame in the speaking of publicly displaying profanity. The distinction between good and evil. Another distinction in the Torah. In Isaiah 5:20, "Woe to them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight." Universities are today's secular temples. They teach that there is no good or evil. It's all a matter of personal opinion. To one man is a terrorist, to the other a freedom fighter. Who are you to be the judge? Living in an age where good and evil is subjective. The Torah says there is good and there is evil, and there can only be good and evil objectively. And wisdom begins with the fear of God. The next distinction, male and female. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. You know, never in history of mankind has same-sex marriage battle become a social issue and sociological divide. Genderless language and classifications are becoming requirements. Same-sex marriage is being touted as the best environment for children. You can choose your sex, your bathrooms, and teams you wish to participate in based on what you want rather than how you are created. And these distinctions are beginning to show up on forms that you fill out for occupations and other things. The Torah is all about distinctions. The signature of Elohim we serve and proclaim. And one more example. Let's get in here. Let's see. Actually, I'll back up here. The Torah requires that we do not wear garments that are mixed with linen and wool. If you look at that in form, you just do it and don't ask why. But if you try to understand the purpose, the function, the purpose was to show the distinction between life and death, plant and animal. So linen comes from a plant, wool comes from the animal. One lives and one, to get it, to put it together, one had to die and one was able to live. So it's just showing that distinction between life and death. Okay, so the Torah is all about distinctions. The signature of Elohim we serve and proclaim. I just went through that, didn't I? Okay, so for our last part, thou shalt have no other gods before me. So we're going to get into the Torah, and we're going to apply some of these principles that we just touched on. Establishing the premises, looking at form versus function, and looking at distinctions. So, in Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 3, and God spake all these words, saying, I am Yahweh thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And then I'm going to tie this in with the Shema in Exodus, or Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God is one Yahweh. Okay, so out of this commandment, how many views or interpretations of the Godhead have come from these verses in the Torah? It's a question for you. Do you understand the question? Okay. So it says, I am Yahweh the God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And in Deuteronomy 6:4, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God is one Yahweh. Okay, so out of these commandments come theologies concerning the Godhead. So name some different theologies concerning the Godhead. Which is, and what do they call that? The Trinity. Okay, there's also other ones. What are some other ones? The oneness doctrine. I think it's big in the Pentecostal movement. Okay. And also, what are some others that have come out of this? How about Judaism? There's one Yahweh, right? There's one. Okay, so the understanding of the Godhead has caused major divides among believers. Do you believe that? For example, in many Christian denominations, if you do not believe in the Trinity, then you are a cult. You are a denier of the Messiah if you don't believe in the Trinity. I mean, have any of you experienced that? Okay. I mean, not all of them, but many of them do. The Godhead is become a critical belief, whether you're saved or not, in many denominations. Okay. In Judaism, if you believe that Yeshua was the Son of God, then you believe in more than one God. And according to the Shema, there can only be one. So is understanding the Godhead critical to inheriting eternal? I bring this up because, over the many years in this walk, I've seen many people divide over this command, understanding the Godhead. Is Yahweh and Yeshua the same person? Are they two different individuals? Or is Yahweh one, and he manifests himself three different ways, as the Son, as the Father, and the Holy Spirit, okay? But people have divided over this. People have said that you are lost if you don't believe in the Trinity. And the Jews will tell you, if you believe Yeshua is the Son of God, then you are, believing that there's more than one God. So you see, the issue is out there. It's real. And it's important that we interpret the Torah, using Hebrew thinking, using the patterns, and focusing on, the function and not the form. It helps in stopping the division. It helps us in understanding what God wants us to focus on, okay? Because there are weightier matters in Torah. And so, is understanding the Godhead critical to inheriting eternal life? Is it necessary to be able to explain the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in form in order to be saved? Many people believe it is a salvation issue and have divided over it. So, is form or function of the Godhead the weightier? Is form or function of the Godhead the weightier matter of the Torah? Is form or function the weightier matter of the Torah concerning the Godhead? So I'm going to go back to context, all right? So I already read that. So let's start here in Deuteronomy chapter 4. It says, "Unto thee it is showed that thou mightest know that Yahweh, he is God, there is none else beside him. Out of heaven he made thee to hear his voice, that he might instruct thee. And upon the earth he showed thee his great fire, and thou heard his words out of the midst of the fire." Now, whose words were those coming out of that fire? I'm just kind of rehearsing some things we've taught before. Whose words were those coming out of that fire? Who was in that bush? It mentions that an angel spoke to him out of the bush. And it mentions that angel was Yeshua. Okay? So, verse 37, "And because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and brought thee out in his sight with his mighty power out of Egypt." Okay? So, "to drive out nations from before thee, greater and mightier than thou, to bring thee in, to give thee their land and inheritance as it is this day. Know therefore this day, and consider in your heart, that Yahweh, he is God, in heaven above and upon the earth beneath, and there is none else." Okay? So as we read this, we form some theology in our mind, how we understand the Godhead, right? So what was so I want to ask the question, so what was the theological landscape in the land of Egypt concerning God's and in all the nations? Maybe I got this up here. They created and worshiped gods made with hands. That was the theological landscape. And if you understand ancient Near East customs, okay, they would make their god out of gold or out of wood, and they would set it up, okay, and they would feed this thing, they would take care of this thing, and they would not just make one. They had gods for many different, for all aspects of life, for health, for food, for rain. They had a god for everything, okay? So this is the theological landscape of that day. So, and it was no different in Egypt and in all the nations. So when they came out of Egypt, these were things that they were exposed to, and the many that came out of Egypt brought their gods with them. Okay, if you remember Rachel and Leah when Jacob left, that Rachel took the gods of her home with her. That was a common thing. They all had their gods, and they used them as like many today use a rabbit's foot. It's kind of like their good luck charm. Okay, so this was the theological landscape. Okay, so when God gave them the commands, he was using their theology and what they were accustomed to teach them that, hey, there's only one. Okay, and so in this command,
that we read in Exodus 20. Thou shalt have no other gods before him. Have you ever noticed what the meaning of the word other means in that command? Do I have it up here? Okay. So in verse 3 there, you see, thou shalt have no other. In Hebrew, that word means strange. Okay. And I bring this up because this is a study I did many years ago, because many believe that if Yeshua pre-existed before he came, that would make him divine, and that would make him, in Judaism, two gods. Okay. And so I wanted to understand the command to see how it fits with understanding the Godhead. So, looking at this word strange, the definition is right up here. This is in the Strong's. It means, other means to properly to hinder. It's translated as next, other. And it means these things here. It means strange. So, thou shalt have no strange gods before me is what the command says, right? Okay. So, just follow with me here. Let's go to Exodus chapter 23. And I'm going to ask the question, how many in the heavenly realm were involved in bringing Israel out of Egypt? How many in the heavenly realm were involved when Israel came out of Egypt? Okay. You know, Yahweh's up there, he's orchestrating this, right? You know. But was there anybody else that involved when Israel came out of Egypt? So, let's read in Exodus 23, 20 through 25. Behold, I send an angel before you to keep thee in the way, to bring thee in the place which I have prepared. Beware of him, and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Okay? So how many can we conclude at this point were two? Okay, we conclude two. But if thou shalt indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy unto your enemies and an adversary unto your adversaries. For mine angel shall go before thee and bring thee in unto the Amorites, the Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, Jebusites, and I will cut them off. Thou shalt not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do after their works, but thou shalt utterly overthrow them and break down their images. So you see here where they had many gods, okay? And the first thing they were supposed to do when they come into the land was to destroy their gods and do not after their works, because with every god there comes a set of rules and guidelines for man to follow, okay? So keep that in mind. God equals rules, okay? We can see that today, you know, in our society. Everybody has their own rules for life. Everybody has their own God. You should not bow down to their gods nor serve them. And in verse 25, but you shall serve Yahweh your God, and he shall bless thy bread and thy water, and will take sickness away from the midst of thee. So remember I said earlier, the theological landscape, they had a God for every facet of life, for health, for food, for water. But what's Yahweh say here? I'm going to provide those things. You don't need all those other things, okay? Because they're not real. All right? Okay. In Deuteronomy 39. Okay, so I asked, you know, how many were with Yahweh, or how many participated in Israel coming out of Egypt? And we've got 2 so far, right? Okay. Well, there's many verses that you read in the Torah and the prophets where it says that, you know, that I'm Yahweh, there is none else. That quote right there is repeated many times in Isaiah, in the Torah, and in many of the prophets, okay? And it indicates that, like, he's the only one orchestrating and participating in everything he's doing down here. But we just saw here that there's 2 participating in Israel coming out of Egypt. Okay, in Deuteronomy 32, he says, for Yahweh's portion is his people.
Jacob is a lot of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land, in a waste and howling wilderness. He led him about. He instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. And as the eagle stirreth up her nest, flutters her young, spreads abroad her wings, takes them and bears them on her wings. So Yahweh alone did lead him. If you stop right there, you come up with this deduction that there's only one in the heavenly realm that is bringing Israel out. But then finish the sentence there. What does it say? There was no strange God with him. And if we tie that back to the commandment, thou shalt have no other, thou shalt have no strange gods before him. So we can begin to formulate, this concept of the Shema, of one God. He's not talking about a number in essence. I mean, in relative to the other nations, he is. There's only one, okay? But with the other nations, each God had a different set of rules. With this God, with Yahweh, there's only one set of rules, okay? But he's using, his Son to orchestrate, to redeem, to bring out, to be able to communicate with man. Because the Father can't dwell in the presence of his creation, because he will destroy them. Remember on the Mount, he says, no man has seen God except Yeshua. Why? Because we would be destroyed in his presence. So he uses his Son to be able to communicate his words to us face to face, okay? But yet one God. Yeshua prayed, prayed to his Father. He says, Father, I pray that they, the ones that are going to believe, that believe in us and that will believe in us, that they may be one even as we are one, okay? So we can begin to see that the commandment isn't so much about understanding the math in the Godhead. It's understanding who God is and that he has one set of rules for all mankind, okay? And so we're going to continue to see this pattern here as we go on. So the concept of the Shema, one Yahweh, was in the context of how the other nations served their gods. Many gods with many different rules, and they were competing with one another. That was the other thing. The nations were always, in battle with one another, trying to determine whose God is the mightiest, okay? That's not how it works in Yahweh's kingdom. So, the Bible mentions two Yahwehs. The Torah mentions two Yahwehs. But yet there's one God. In Genesis chapter 19, it says, Then Yahweh rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from Yahweh out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and that which grew upon the ground. So who are these two Yahwehs? I see him as the Father and the Son. Remember who it was that talked with Abraham? His name was Yahweh. And Abraham looked at him and said, Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? Well, who's the judge of all the earth? Yeshua said, The Father judgeth no man, but hath committed all judgment unto the Son. So again, we see this mediator that could communicate Yahweh's word to man face to face was Yeshua. So we see here that Yahweh rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire out of Yahweh out of heaven. Two Yahwehs, but yet one God. And why are they one God? How can two be one? That doesn't follow the rules of math. Because they have one purpose. If we look at form, we'd say there's two. But if we look at function, there's one purpose. There's one body. How many people are in one body? Again, it's not a numerical, problem that he wants us to understand. It's the function. Okay, so in closing. So it's concerning, therefore, the eating of those things that are offered and sacrificed unto idols. We know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is none other God but one. For though there be that are called gods, which in heaven, whether in heaven or in earth, as there be gods many and lords many, but to us there is but one God, and this is how he defines it. The Father, of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord Yeshua the Messiah, by whom are all things, and we by him. So the concept of one God was connected to the concept of one law for all men. With many gods, there are many laws. But with Yahweh and in his kingdom, there is one Torah. We read this last week. The concept of one God is connected to the concept of one law for all men. With many gods, there are many laws. In Exodus 12:49, for one law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourns among you. And Yeshua kind of puts this connection together, that one God, the Shema, is connected to one law, one instruction for all. In chapter 12, verse 28 of Mark, it says, and one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, and perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, which is the first commandment of all? And Yeshua answered, the first commandment of all is, hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God is one, Lord. Thou shalt love Yahweh with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. So it's interesting. You see how he connected this, that there's one law to one God here, and he explains it. And it's in the Torah. So the Torah, the premise and the foundation of our faith, the first premise should be that the Torah is first and foremost the most important, and it should be what we test everything against. The prophets, the New Testament, the apostles. And for this isn't, I don't have this up on the screen, but I'd like to read to you from Malachi 2. And it brings this connection of the importance of one law, the distinction that the Torah has, and the importance to follow it. And this is from Malachi chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. And it says, and now, O ye priests, this commandment is for you. If you will not hear, and if you will not lay it to heart to give glory unto my name, saith Yahweh of hosts, even I will send a curse upon you, and will curse your blessings. I have cursed them already, because you do not lay it to heart. Because I will corrupt your seed, and spread dung upon your faces, even the dung of your solemn feasts, and one shall take you away with it. And ye shall know that I have sent this commandment unto you, that my covenant might be with Levi, saith Yahweh of hosts. My covenant was with him of life and peace, and I gave them to him for the fear wherewith he feared me, and was afraid before my name. The Torah of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and equity, and did turn many away from iniquity. Now, I think he's referring here, when he's talking about the Levites. If you remember, the Levites haven't been righteous, all their generations. But he's referring back to the time when he came down from the mount with the 10 Commandments. And he saw the host before him, and they were committing iniquity, but right before the mount and before Yahweh on the mount. And he threw the commandments down, and Yahweh was ready to destroy him. And he told Moses to take up your sword. And Moses asked, who is on Yahweh's side? Come over here. And who came? It was Levi. He came. Okay. So at that moment, Levi understood the importance of following the instructions, so that might be a blessing to all generations. And so he's referring to that point here in Malachi. And the law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. And he walked with me in peace and equity, and did turn many away from iniquity. For the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and they should seek the Torah of his mouth, for he is the messenger of Yahweh of hosts. But ye are departed out of the way, and ye have caused many to stumble at the Torah. Ye have corrupted the covenant of Levi, saith Yahweh of hosts. Therefore have I also made you contemptible and base before all people, according as ye have not kept my ways, but have been partial in the Torah. Have we not all one Father? Have not one God created us? Why do we deal treacherously every man against his brother by profaning the covenant of our fathers? So here I just wanted to make the connection that we have one Father, we have one God, okay, then who created us. So why do we deal, treacherously with one another? We have one instruction. We have one Father. We have one God. And so I just want to make that connection there. So that there's a lot more verses I could have brought in dealing with the first commandment, but we're kind of out of time, and so we're going to have to stop right here. So we'll continue this series on the Torah basics, and if there's something I missed or didn't explain correctly, get with me. If there's something else you'd like to be brought in this series, just let me know. But next week you're going to have an exciting message from.
Would you stand and receive the blessing? Let me just clarify this. Just like when we blessed our children, we had a prayer over our children. We blessed them. The Lord in Numbers 6:27 through Numbers 6:22 through 27. The Lord blesses us. He prays a blessing on us. So this is from the Lord. He instructed Aharon to bless his people. So the Lord is blessing you, and you need to receive this. Okay? The Lord is giving you a gift, and it's for you to receive it, and all the blessings that are pertained in this blessing. And we need to be reminded of that, just how much the Lord loves us, and he cares for us, and he makes provision for us, and just understanding the heart of the Father, because he's saying these things from his heart, and we need to receive it as such. Is that okay? All right. So, in Numbers 6:22 through 27, it says, "And the Lord spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aharon and to his sons, saying, Thus you shall bless the sons of Israel. You shall say to them," and I'll say it in Hebrew, and then we'll do it in English. Yevarecha Yahweh v'yishmerecha Yair Yahweh panav elecha v'chumnecha Yisa Yahweh panav elecha ve'asem lecha shalom. And then what the Lord is saying in English: may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his shalom. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach Shahar Shalom Hu Adonai. In the name of Yeshua, the Prince of Peace, you are Lord. And all of God's people said, Amen. So please join us for a fellowship meal. We call it oneg in Hebrew. And you don't have to have brought something. Just bring an appetite, and in a few minutes we'll be eating together.